It feels like these days, if you're in manufacturing and trying to keep things running smoothly, there's just so much to keep track of.
Yeah, especially with all the talk about AI and new tech coming out all the time.
It's like trying to drink from a fire hose,
Right.
right? There's just a constant stream of information and new things to consider.
I think that's a really good way to put it.
So today we want to kind of break down a specific type of AI that we are calling DXAI for now.
Right?
And we want to talk about how it can actually help make that transition to more digital ways of working in manufacturing a little bit smoother.
Yeah.
And the big thing here is that we're going to try and make sure that this all makes sense, even if you aren't really someone who considers themselves like a tech expert.
Yeah, no, we really want to explain it in a way that clicks,
Exactly.
for everyone.
Yeah.
This is about sort of demystifying this new technology, and we've been looking at some really exciting approaches to using AI specifically for manufacturing
Yeah.
and focusing on those key areas of like quality control, equipment maintenance, and making sure everything is safe.
Right. Making sure that it's all connected in a way that actually makes sense.
Exactly, smarter and more interconnected.
So by the time we're done here, you should have a really good understanding of what DXAI is all about and how it can actually translate into real improvements on the factory floor,
Yeah.
making everything run smoother and just generally be more efficient.
Yeah, and maybe even a little less stressful.
Exactly. All right. So, I think a good place to start would be to talk about some of the common challenges that manufacturing companies are already facing,
Yeah, absolutely.
even before we bring AI into the mix.
Well, one of the biggest issues that we hear about all the time is that information tends to be scattered all over the place.
Okay.
You've got data about your machines in one system, quality control records somewhere else entirely, safety guidelines in another.
It's like different departments each have their own little kingdoms of information,
Exactly.
right? And they're not really talking to each other.
Yeah, it's like trying to assemble a puzzle, but all the pieces are in separate boxes.
That's a great way to put it.
You can't see the full picture.
Right.
And that makes it really hard to make informed decisions.
Because if you can't see how everything connects,
Yeah.
you might miss those really important links
Yeah.
between,
Right,
what seems like a small issue over here that actually ends up being a big problem over there.
right.
And I know you've talked about how sometimes that lack of connection between information can actually lead to some pretty serious problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you give us an example of how that might play out in the real world?
Sure. So imagine you have a slight malfunction with a machine on the production line.
Okay.
Maybe it's not calibrated correctly, something like that. Now, if you don't have a way to see how that connects to your quality control data,
Right.
you might end up producing a batch of products that don't meet your standards.
Oh, I see.
And if that problem isn't caught early enough,
Right.
it could even escalate into a safety concern if those faulty products end up in the hands of customers.
So it's like a chain reaction
Exactly.
where one thing leads to another, but you can't see all the links.
You're just reacting to each problem as it pops up.
Right, putting out fires instead of preventing them.
Exactly.
And I know another thing we've talked about before is that, it's not just about the technology and the data itself.
Yeah.
It's also about the people.
The human element is huge.
Right, because what happens when someone who has all that experience, and
Right.
all that knowledge in their head decides to retire?
Yeah, that's a big problem that a lot of companies are facing right now.
Yeah, because it's not always written down.
Right, it's that tribal knowledge that just sort of disappears when someone leaves.
It's like losing the secret ingredient in a recipe.
Exactly. And then you're left trying to figure out how to recreate it.
Right, and it's not easy.
And on top of all that, the manufacturing industry has to deal with so many regulations.
Oh yeah, it's a whole other layer of complexity.
Just keeping up with all the rules and making sure you're compliant can be a full-time job in itself.
And the consequences of getting it wrong can be pretty serious.
Absolutely. You don't want to end up facing legal issues or fines.
So we've got data scattered everywhere. It's hard to see the connections. We're losing valuable knowledge, and we're trying to navigate this maze of regulations.
Yeah.
It sounds like the perfect recipe for things to go wrong.
It can be incredibly challenging.
And this is where this idea of DXAI comes in.
Right. It's about finding a way to address all these challenges and create a more efficient and safer working environment.
So what is it about DXAI that makes it different from just any other type of AI?
Well, the key thing to remember is that DXAI isn't just some generic AI that's been repurposed for manufacturing.
Okay.
It's been designed specifically with the needs of the industry in mind.
From the ground up.
Exactly.
All right.
So it's not just about crunching numbers or automating tasks. It's about understanding the nuances of how a manufacturing facility actually operates.
So it's more than just a chatbot you can ask questions to.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
It's more like having a really experienced partner who understands your equipment, your
Mhm.
quality standards, your safety protocols.
And how it all fits together.
Exactly.
Okay, so without getting too technical,
Sure.
can you give us a sense of how DXAI actually works?
Yeah, so at its core, DXAI is all about bringing together all those different pieces of information that are usually scattered around.
Okay.
So think blueprints for equipment, work instructions, those quality inspection records, analysis results, all of that.
And even voice recordings, right?
Oh, absolutely, because so much knowledge is shared through conversations and explanations.
Right, so it's not just about the formal documentation.
Exactly.
It's about capturing that real-world knowledge.
Right. And then once it has access to all this information,
Mhm.
it uses a combination of really powerful technologies to make sense of it all.
Okay, like what?
So, for example, it might use something called OCR, optical character recognition.
Oh,
And that allows it to actually read text from images like diagrams or scanned documents.
so it can pull information directly from those equipment drawings.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And for those voice recordings we talked about, it uses something called STT, speech to text,
Okay.
to convert the spoken words into written text so the AI can understand them.
So it's like it's listening and taking notes?
Precisely. And then for things like quality control results that are already in a database.
Right, more structured data.
Exactly. It uses what are called rule-based parsers to organize that information in a way that the AI can easily use.
So it's basically taking all these different forms of information
Yeah,
and translating them into a language that the AI can understand.
exactly. It's all about making sure the data is in a format that the AI can work with.
So once it's got all that data in a usable format, what happens next?
Well, the next step is to store it efficiently. And this is where special types of databases come in.
Okay.
One of the really cool ones is called a vector database.
A vector database.
Yeah, it's like a supercharged search engine.
All right.
It can find information that's similar in meaning, even if the words used are different.
So it's not just looking for exact keywords.
Right. It's understanding the intent behind the search.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And then to understand how different things relate to each other, it uses something called an ontology database.
Ontology, okay.
This helps the AI understand the context, like how a specific machine part relates to a safety procedure.
So it's building a map of all the knowledge and how it all connects.
Exactly. And then the real brain power comes from these powerful AI models.
All right.
These are sophisticated algorithms that can process all that information and actually provide answers, make predictions, and even generate reports.
And are we talking about like specific types of AI models here, or is it more general?
Yeah, there are some really interesting models out there, like one called Gemma 3B, that's particularly well suited for this kind of task. And these models can be managed and run using platforms like Llama and LangChain, which are kind of like toolkits for building and managing these AI systems.
So they make it easier to deploy and integrate this whole thing.
Exactly.
So we've talked about how it gathers information, organizes it, and uses AI to process it.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like for the people who are using DXAI on a day-to-day basis?
Well, there are a few different ways people can interact with it.
Okay.
One of the most common is through chatbots,
Okay.
where they can just type or speak their questions naturally.
So it's like having a conversation with the system.
Exactly, but it's not just about asking questions.
Right.
DXAI can also provide information proactively through dashboards and alerts.
So it's not just reactive, it's also giving you insights and warnings before things go wrong.
Precisely.
And I know you've mentioned before that security is a really big concern, especially in manufacturing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So how does DXAI address that?
Well, one of the big advantages is that these systems can be set up to run entirely within a company's own secure network.
So you don't have to send your sensitive data to the cloud.
Exactly. It all stays on your own servers, behind your own firewalls.
So that addresses a lot of those concerns about data privacy and security.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now that we have a good understanding of how DXAI works, let's talk about what it can actually do.
Okay.
What are some of the key capabilities that make it so beneficial in a manufacturing setting?
Well, one of the most powerful things is its ability to provide instant answers through something called RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation.
RAG, okay.
It basically means that the system can instantly search through all those documents and data we talked about and give you a precise answer to your question.
So no more digging through manuals or trying to track down the right person.
Exactly. It's all right there at your fingertips.
That's got to save a ton of time.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm also curious about how DXAI handles those complex equipment diagrams.
Yeah, that's another area where it really shines.
Okay.
It uses that OCR technology to extract all the important information from those diagrams.
So it can identify components, understand the connections between them.
Right. It's like having an X-ray vision for your machinery.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And with that ontology database, it can even understand how those components relate to safety regulations or potential hazards.
So it's not just about understanding the machinery itself, it's
Right.
about understanding the bigger picture.
Exactly.
And what about that issue of losing expert knowledge when people retire?
Yeah, that's where those voice recordings come in.
Okay.
By transcribing them, the system can actually capture that expert knowledge and make it searchable.
So it's like creating a library of expert advice.
Exactly.
That's a really smart way to preserve that institutional knowledge.
Yeah, and then with all the IoT sensors that are being used in factories these days,
Right.
DXAI can connect to those sensors and monitor equipment in real time.
So it can detect anomalies and potentially predict failures before they happen.
Exactly. It's about moving from reactive maintenance to proactive maintenance.
That's got to be a huge cost saver.
Oh, absolutely.
So we've got instant answers, diagram understanding, hazard identification, knowledge capture, and real-time monitoring.
Yeah.
That's a lot of power.
And the really exciting part is how all these capabilities work together.
Right, because they're not just individual features.
Exactly. They're all interconnected.
So it's more than the sum of its parts.
Precisely. It's about creating a truly intelligent system.
Okay, so can you give us a real-world example of how this might all come together in a manufacturing setting?
Sure, let's imagine a worker notices a problem with a valve on a machine.
Okay.
They could simply ask the DXAI, what should I do if there's a leak in valve #3?
A pretty straightforward question.
Right. And the system would immediately go to work.
Okay.
It would use OCR to find valve #3 in the diagram, pull up all the specs, and then using the ontology, it would understand that that valve is in a hazardous area.
Okay.
So it knows that a leak there is a serious issue. It would then access the safety regulations, see if there are any past incidents involving that valve.
So it's pulling information from all these different sources.
Exactly. And then it would provide the worker with clear instructions on what to do.
Like what kind of instructions?
Things like shut down the machine, evacuate the area, wear the appropriate safety gear.
So it's not just giving information, it's actually guiding the worker through the situation.
Exactly. It's providing actionable steps.
That's really impressive.
It's about empowering workers to make the right decisions quickly and safely.
So it sounds like DXAI has the potential to really benefit people in a lot of different roles within a manufacturing company.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you give us some examples of how it might impact different teams?
Sure. So for the workers on the factory floor, it means having instant access to information and guidance.
Okay.
They don't have to waste time searching for manuals or asking around.
Right. It streamlines their workflow.
Exactly. And it can also help prevent accidents by making sure they have the right safety information.
So it's both more efficient and safer.
Right. And then for engineers, DXAI can help them analyze data, predict failures, and generate reports automatically.
So it frees up their time for more strategic work.
Exactly. It's like having an extra set of hands.
And what about for the managers?
For managers, it provides a really valuable overview of operations.
Okay.
They can compare performance across different lines or plants, see historical trends, and get insights into potential risks.
So it helps them make more informed decisions.
Exactly. And it can also help with things like compliance and reporting.
So it's really about empowering everyone in the organization.
Yeah, it's about giving everyone the tools they need to do their jobs better.
And I know some companies might be thinking that implementing something like this is just a massive undertaking.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
You can start small and scale up gradually.
So what would be a good first step for a company that's interested in exploring DXAI?
A really practical place to start is with a simple question and answer system. You can use your existing documents like manuals and procedures to create a knowledge base.
So it's like a smart search engine for your internal information.
Exactly. And then from there, you can start building more sophisticated capabilities like that archive system we talked about.
And maybe even start incorporating those ontology databases to understand those relationships.
Right. And as you get more comfortable, you can even start experimenting with fine-tuning AI models with your own specific data.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. It's about continuous improvement.
So what would you say makes DXAI stand out from all the other AI solutions that are out there?
Well, one of the key things is that it's not just some general purpose AI.
Right.
It's specifically designed for manufacturing.
It has that deep domain expertise.
Exactly. It understands the language of manufacturing.
And that translates into more accurate and relevant results.
Precisely. And it can also operate on-premise, which is a big deal for a lot of companies.
Right, because it addresses those security concerns.
And it's all about practical application, solving real-world problems on the factory floor.
So it's not just technology for technology's sake.
Right. It's about making a real difference.
So as we wrap up here, what are the key takeaways that you hope people will remember from our deep dive into DXAI?
I think the most important thing is that DXAI is a powerful tool for digital transformation in manufacturing.
Okay.
It's about connecting information, understanding relationships, and providing support to everyone in the organization.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's
Yeah.
about how it empowers people to do their jobs better.
Exactly.
So for you, the listener, I hope this has given you a better understanding of how this technology can address those common challenges in manufacturing
Yeah.
and how it can lead to real improvements in efficiency, safety, and knowledge sharing.
And maybe it sparks some ideas about how you could use DXAI in your own operations.
Because ultimately, it's about asking the right questions and exploring the possibilities.
And I think the most exciting thing is that we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with this technology.
Right. It's a constantly evolving field.
So who knows what the future holds?
Indeed. So much potential there. Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
All right, take care.
You too.